Hi YouTube, Brylana Moonstone here. Today, I have been a recording maniac, which is interesting after this lack of anything to say. Now, when I'll get it edited and uploaded is a total different story, especially now that I have to edit out the fact that I use my real name in two of my other videos by accident, but hey, whatever, I'll edit it. It's funny too, because I was just on Facebook and Cricket Song of Lunar Wisdom had written a post or a status update saying, wow, I've been recording like 4, hope nobody gets, sick of hearing me. I just find it funny. It's something in the air. We have something to say. Anyway, today, on this video, I would like to discuss a concept called being a detached observer. This is in response to Brooke at Thriving Vine. I do not remember the context. I can't remember if she was commenting on a video that I did or I was commenting on a video that she did, but she basically asked, what do I mean by a detached observer? So this is in response to that. Well, first of all, the term detached observer, all it is a set of words to describe what I feel like my role in this world is right now. And I was talking, maybe it was one of my tarot lessons, I can't remember, but I was talking to Jackie, One Moon Mother, about what I feel my role is, and talking about what that looked like. It was in context with something else. I can't remember what. And she said, oh, you're a detached observer. And I snatched the term. Because in my head, the other term that I was using was the term, I think I need to speak. Excuse me. Surprise. Might edit that out too. The other term that I was using before in my head was the term watcher, but that sounds a little stalkery. The detached observer is more what I've come into. So what do I mean by a detached observer? I would say that a detached observer is a type of archetype. For example, Maiden, Mother, Crone. Those are representative of characteristics of particular seasons of whatever. Seasons of life, perhaps. Seasons of spiritual development, perhaps. And each of those aspects, Maiden, Mother, and Crone, each have their own characteristics that seem to ring true for that season. Or for a less metaphysical terminology, drama queen. Okay, that might look different for different people as an archetype, but you sure know a drama queen when you come across them, right? It's an archetype. I'll sort of define it as succinctly as I can, and then I will sort of describe the process that I came to get there, okay? In my view, okay, I am of this opinion. I don't know if there is a definition of an archetype of this sort. I have no idea. I don't care. This is just my personal opinion. A detached observer is somebody who is watching their sphere of influence, perhaps their family, perhaps their social sphere, friends, family, online acquaintances, relationships, local doings and happenings on to their geographic location, global happenings, both geographically, geopolitically, politically, socially, environmentally. The detached portion of the observer comes into the being able to do the observing without becoming personally, emotionally invested in what it is that you are observing. Now, before I get to how I came to this conclusion about myself and my role in the world, what I currently feel is my role in the world, I want to talk a little bit about the what I think about. This is hard because it's all in my head, but I'm having trouble speaking it. First off, why do I think it's my role in the world? I'll tell you how I got there, but do I think it can change? Absolutely. My role may change. What is the purpose of watching? I don't know what the end result will be. I don't know if the world or the current state, excuse me, the current state of humanity needs people to observe. Perhaps at a later point in time, there will become a need for the observers to share their observations of the past. Perhaps a new line of verbal bards and storytellers will need to come. I don't know. My role may change. I may end up called to some sort of action based upon what I've observed. I don't know. Where I am now in my feeling this is my role, because I've run into people who say, well, you're not doing anything. You see something, but you're not taking a stand. I truly believe that I am not meant to be any sort of activist, any sort of catalyst in terms of anything broader beyond my own family. I believe I am called to put whatever it is that I observe and come to conclusions about into practice for my own environment, my own family. And that might take different forms, you know. But beyond the scope of my own house, my own family, I do not feel called to lead anyone. I do not feel called to teach anyone. I do not feel called to be a catalyzer of change. I do not feel called to save anything, be it animals, people, the environment, social causes, social justice, anything involving politics or religion. I simply don't feel called to it. I do not shy away from it. If you were to know me in my real life, you would know that I am a fighter who very much stands up for what she feels is necessary. I guess the best example I can give you of that is one of my children is special needs, and those special needs require special teachers, special environments, special doctors, and that requires being involved in a lot of bureaucratic red tape. Well, it is my job as his mother and advocate to cut the red tape for the ultimate goal of him receiving helps that he needs. I am a mama bear. I quite literally wear combat boots, lace up to here, combat boots. I wear those to his IEP meetings. I, now that he is 12 and I've been fighting this fight for more than half of his life, am known within the local education community as a force to be reckoned with. So the reason I bring that up is I want to make it clear that when I say I'm a detached observer, that is not called to be a catalyst or leader or arbitrator of anything. Those who find that statement to be incredibly passive, well, I am trying to follow the lead that my divine guidance is giving me. By nature, I am not a passive creature. Oh, Lordy. My husband could tell you that. I am not a passive creature. I go for what I want and I fight tooth and nail for it, and if you get in my way, I will run over you like a steamroller if the situation warrants it, because I feel that it's you're hindering the progress of someone in my family. That is just the way it is. So the passive stance I am taking in being an observer does not come from a passive place. It comes from an active place of wanting to fulfill what I feel my divine role is for now. And like I said, that could change. Now, how I came here actually is what started my entire spiritual path that I am on now. Now that I look back, hindsight, seeing the roads that I took. So how it happened, and this will go into a little bit of how I'm on the spiritual path that I'm on. It has to be it's probably more than 4 years ago, because it was before President Obama was in office, and I think it might have been right before the election and, what am I trying to say? The political re-election process began for Obama's administration. So, it probably happened or started happening, I'm just thinking back in time-wise, so it was probably more like about 5 years ago. I was very much still a traditional Christian. I still consider myself a Christian, but nobody would say I'm a traditional Christian by any means. What other labels you put on it and I put on it, I am definitely not a traditional Christian anymore. But when I was back in traditional Christianity, I stumbled upon what it was. It doesn't matter, but what it was a fulfillment of prophecy of end times. And when I stumbled onto this little piece of a puzzle, that had already been fulfilled, it had already happened, and I didn't know that it had already happened until I accidentally stumbled onto this little piece of the puzzle, and I was a little shocked at the fact that I didn't know this and that this wasn't common knowledge within the Christian circles that I was in. So when that occurred, that prompted me to do some more research on end times prophecy, Revelations, the Seven Seals, Armageddon, Tribulation, and specifically trying to figure out what that would look like now in modern terms, in modern context. Okay, so the horse rider of death, what does that look like? The horse rider of this, that, and the other. What would that translate into our current world? So, and I think I was doing that so that I would know when it was happening when I saw those things. So that led to research, which led to this, which led to that, which led to this, which led to that. Okay. Right about the same time, I read a fiction book. I don't remember why I got it. I don't know. Maybe someone sent it to me for review, because in my non-secret life, I have a blog and people send me books and stuff to review on it. And but the book itself was called The Expected One by, I hope I get her name right, Kathleen McGowan, I believe. Which was a fictional but semi-autobiographical biographical. Okay, it was fiction, but kind of based on happenings in her own life. Account of the Holy Grail, what the Grail meant, and the concept of Mary Magdalene as being the wife of Jesus, and her being the Grail, and then what that meant after Jesus' crucifixion, and then on down the line. Now, the concept of Mary Magdalene being Jesus' wife as a concept, fiction or otherwise, wasn't new to me, because I had already read Angels and Demons and the Da Vinci Code. It didn't, while those books really spoke to me, I found them fascinating because of my natural conspiracy theory tendencies. It wasn't like I had a epiphany or anything. That being said, I read The Expected One, and even though it's a fiction book, there was this feeling that spread through me of, oh my gosh, what if? And if, it makes so much sense in terms of Jewish teachers and family dynamics of the time, and then further down the line, like after his crucifixion, what may have happened to his meaning Jesus's testimony, his teachings. And I found that fascinating, just the concept of it and the ramifications of it. So right at the same time that I was ruminating on end time prophecies and end time research, I stumbled upon this concept in a more personal sense. And prior to this, in terms of my relationship to religion, while I definitely felt that I had a relationship with Jesus and with God, I could not say that I felt I had a relationship with the church and the church's teachings, because it seemed to me that, and I couldn't ever live up to anything. And I don't really mean in the sinner salvation grace sense. I mean in the, well, a good Christian woman is supposed to be this and do this and submissive to her husband looks like this, and I really struggled with all of that, because I felt that there was a what I am supposed to be according to all these people who say so and are supposed to be learned in Christian principles and how they apply to life. I don't look like that. Like I said, I'm not a passive person. So what does submissive to husband headship look like when you're not a passive person? And so I would look into that, and, I would be told via these resources that, then, the husband is the head, and so he controls the money. Yeah, no. I'm the saver, he's the spender. I'm the anal retentive freak who knows when the electric bill's due. He's like, stamp, check, mail, what day, what? No, he probably could if he really put his mindset to it, but because he's a smart man. But his gifts do not lie there. And he has a much more relaxed, here, now, present time attitude than I do even now, even though I'm better about that. And so I needed to be in charge of that stuff, We have a saying within our relationship that, he makes sure that I have fun, and I make sure he's insured while he does it. And that works for us. Okay, well, he's supposed to be the head of the household and the head of the spiritual stuff, and no, it's just not him. And not only that, I was getting frustrated with him because he wasn't these things, and if he wasn't these things, how could I be these things? Because I have to take over for what he wasn't, and it really created a difficulty for me in terms of how to be a good Christian woman. And if I wasn't, and I was seeing evidence that I wasn't, what does that mean? So then I kept, and there always felt like there was something, a component. What? I'm not sure. At the time, I wasn't sure. But there was a component missing. It was like I felt sure that I was missing some key piece of information that would make it all click for me. And that if I just found that key piece, then everything would make sense. And so then I read this book, The Expected One, and I start ruminating and thinking about the concept of Jesus having a wife. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean if she was his co-teacher? Well, you start changing everything. You start changing everything. Paul's admonitions about, women not being heard and stuff like that. It started when I started thinking about the concept. One, the fact that he was married made actually a lot of cultural sense to me. A lot of cultural sense. So I didn't have a problem with that concept in a cultural sense. And so I started reading more, and reading more, and reading more, which introduced concepts of the Apocrypha and the Nag Hammadi and the Essenes and Gnosticism and Sophia, and ultimately the divine feminine, the sacred feminine, the conjoining, the hieros gamos, the conjoining of the feminine and the masculine, what that has the potential of producing, what aspects the sacred feminine might bring to you. Okay, so then I was then confronted with this concept of the sacred feminine and all that goes with it, and all that might go with it in terms of biblical history, meaning the history of the creation of the Bible, Christianity's history, meaning the formulation of the religion as it stands now. What was Jesus' real message? What was Mary Magdalene's real message? What was their message to the people as a group, as a couple, as co-teachers? As avatars, dare I say it? Combined with my separate research of the end times and biblical prophecy and what that might look like today. Well, those studies then led me to other cultures' end times prophecies and other people's, not necessarily cultures, but other people's revelations on end times, such as, Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, the Aztecs, the Mayans, and more. Ultimately, that led to a great deal of anxiety. I have a crisis of fear in regards to what I felt might be coming in terms of the universe and our world, in terms of end times. And also how do I prepare my family for that from a strictly strategic, logistic, living in this house, in this state. What do we do and how do we prepare when we have absolutely no money and we're living in poverty? Coupled with my crisis of faith, because I had started running into concepts and ideas that thrummed with a recognition so strong within my own self that it was visceral. And yet, it went against everything that I was taught to believe. So if I believe those things, what does that mean ultimately for my soul? What does that mean ultimately for my family? What does that mean about the afterlife? What does that mean about my place on this earth? What does that mean about all the Christians who believe this, and all the Muslims who believe this, and all the Buddhists who believe this, and all the Wiccans who believe this, and the Hindus who believe this? Which also led to studies on, the biblical history and how the Bible itself as a book came about, and what was left out and why, and who decided what was left out. And for goodness sake, there was a council in which the topic of conversation was whether or not women, females, even had a soul. Whether it was possible for us wicked creatures to even have a soul. And all of this ultimately led to a lot of anxiety on my part. And remember, this also got real personal, not just from my own personal spiritual perspective, but from my family perspective, because I have in-laws who are fundamentalist Christians. I have in-laws who, when things happened with my oldest son, in which we realized that he had some mental illness that threatened to potentially try to get custody so that he wouldn't be treated psychiatrically because they were so against it. I had a husband who I had met and loved deeply in church. It was a very biblically based, from a spiritual perspective, if not a practical perspective, within church and Christian principles. And if I changed my beliefs and changed my practices, what would that do to our marriage? So needless to say, with all of these studies and thoughts and truly groundbreaking, earth-shattering for me from a personal standpoint concepts, that if I moved forward in terms of practice, procedure, espousal on any of it, would have some real serious ramifications. And yet, thrummed so true in my gut. And of course, I said I'm not a passive person. I do what I believe. And right about that time, my son was in therapy, and I was very involved in his therapy as his parent because he's still young. And sometimes we had family therapy, but usually it was individual. But the therapist would take me aside, once a month and take part of his time and really talk to me about his progress and gave me a forum to let her know what might be going on at home and what I've been seeing in him, that type of thing, a catch-up session for that. She looked at me one day. Now, mind you, I am a woman who owns a business, runs a business, has elderly parents next door, one of whom has Alzheimer's and many other life-threatening illnesses. My mother is 81, my father is 77. I help care for them. They live next door. We're living in poverty. I have 2 special needs kids. I've got a husband who works nights, so we're on sort of, day-night schedules, who misses holidays sometimes because he has to work. I've got one child in the system in order for him to get his special needs met. I've got another child who will need parts transplanted into his heart. And so in the meantime, until that happens, needs to be monitored. Not to mention all of the insurance ramifications, school ramifications, Board of Education ramifications, school district ramifications, paperwork for special programs for each of them to get what legally they get, therapists, occupational therapists, cardiologists, pediatricians, psychiatrists, regular therapists, school psychologists, district psychologists, principals, teachers, and special ed teachers. Needless to say, I have lots and lots and lots of balls in the air. And the therapist looked at me one day. I don't even remember what we were talking about, except that it was in relation to my son. And she said, "Rolana, would you like to have therapy?" I'm like, "What? We're in therapy." And she said, "You know what? I think you need your own." I mean, it wasn't a, "Girl, you are falling off the edge of a cliff, you crazy." No, it was more of a, you're the caretaker of 1, 2, 3, 4 adults and 2 children. And everything in between. I think that it might be time for you to think about yourself for a little bit and see where that takes you. And this came at the same time as all these other spiritual revelations were going on. And so I said yes, and I started private therapy with her, just me and her. And it turned out that she was very spiritual herself. I would say Christian, but I would label her more esoteric in her own spiritual growth. And so I think that she was a very good match for me, because we would go in and talk and it wouldn't be about the spiritual stuff. And somehow all the time, every single session, it came back to that. And I started really struggling because I definitely wasn't feeling as though I needed to do anything about anything, except practice what I believed, but do anything about anything. But I was observing things everywhere. Like chemtrails started up really bad in my area at that time, and I would watch them day after day after day, making these checkerboards across the sky. I was watching prophetic things being put on the rails for lining up with things. I was seeing death and destruction everywhere and feeling this immense sense of helplessness, and that it was happening to me and to my family, and that nobody seemed to see it, and that nobody seemed to get it, and that nobody seemed to give a rat's ass. And what am I supposed to do with this information? And it was really, my ulcers were acting up again. My hair was falling out. It was really taking a toll on me. I guess it was me waking up and then not knowing what to do with my waking up. So all of this was a dream? Well, now what do I do with reality? And she and I, in one of my sessions, did a meditation session. And in that particular meditation session, she would do guided meditation with me, and we would discuss beforehand who was going to be where and doing what, so that some of that was taken away from my thought process, and I would just go into it with an open sense. In this particular session, I was speaking with Jesus and Mary were there. And Mary was sort of off in a corner. She was there, and she wanted me to know that she was there, but she also wanted me to know that this is not my time with you right now. You need to listen to what Jesus has to say. Yeshua. You need to listen to him. And, it wasn't like she talked to me. It was more like she said all that with her eyes, and I understood it, and so I said, okay, what? To Jesus. And Jesus literally, put his hand on the top of my head. I was sitting, and he was standing next to me, and put, his hand on my head. And when he did that, I felt utter peace. And then after that, he said in my head, don't you get it? You don't have to do anything about anything. It is just your job to watch. It is just your job to observe. You do not have to do anything about anything that you're seeing. That is just not your job. And I felt this blessed, peaceful relief. After that, taking what he said into account, I started garnering more resources in which that I could observe more things. So I look at things on mainstream media, conservative media, liberal media, tinfoil. I call them my tinfoil hat sites, where wowzers, religious sites, spiritual sites, and then of course individuals, blogs, YouTube channels, Facebook accounts, and I just have a little routine where I keep an eye on everything. I feel no pressure to do so, and I feel no pressure to watch everything. The detached part of the detached observer comes from that anxiety and utter panic that I had been feeling. It is not, I feel, my responsibility to feel anything for or about what's going on. Because my body right now in 3D on this planet, right now physically, cannot handle the scope of the emotions. It will eat itself inside out. And so I've learned how to be detached in order to observe what's going on, to create more of a larger picture instead of an issue by issue picture. The detachment comes in watching the different pieces play their parts, play their roles, and then I can place the puzzle pieces into the larger picture. I do believe there is a bigger picture. I do believe that all of it has its own role to play. Whether you or I believe that individual issues are right or wrong doesn't matter in the big scheme picture. In the big scheme picture, I think it's all about the whole of humanity. Does that mean I have answers to the purpose of life? No. Does that mean I have answers to the afterlife? No. I can tell you that I, in my personal spiritual practice, study the ways of witchcraft, study the ways of Christianity in the Jesus teaching sense. I'm looking into what's called the way of love. Love as a concept, oneness as a concept, the universal laws of attraction as a concept, reincarnation and karma as a concept, cosmic whole consciousness as a concept. And these are things that I do study as a practice. But I'm also able to detach my emotions and watch everything going on, and hopefully not get involved in any drama, because that'll suck my emotions back in. Because I feel my role is to watch, I feel that I also need to watch all of it, even if I don't like it, even if I disagree with it and think it's morally wrong by my own personal standards. Even if I think the person is wrong in what they're doing and what they believe, whatever. And that can be hard sometimes, and for some people think very cold, unfeeling. Some people think very passive. But I think I was born for this as I've grown up, and there's lots of things that you do not know about me and you do not know about my past. But a requirement of surviving my past was the art of compartmentalizing. The art of putting aside in order to get through the day. I was being groomed for this right now. So, oh, there's a husband back there. So, that is what I believe being a detached observer is. Like I said, that role might change. I may be called to act upon something I observe. I am absolutely not in a box. I do what I believe that the divine is telling me to do. I believe that I am open to that. That is scary sometimes. But maybe, quite simply, big things are coming and they'll need some storytellers. That could be the purpose. I don't know. So I shall talk to you later on other subjects, but that's my diatribe on the Detached Observer. Bye.